Hello, welcome, and thank you for joining us for today's Simon Says Expert Series, conversation about lung cancer. My name is Elyse Turula. I am Harry's wife. That's why I'm here. My husband, Harry, was diagnosed with lung cancer in March of 2016, and he died in October of 2017. Never could I have imagined that 4 years later, I would be a part of this amazing family, that I would be doing something like this today. And more than that, I never could have imagined that I would be having the pleasure of introducing Dr. Nasser Hanna, not as Harry's oncologist, but as my friend. Dr. Hanna?
Well, thank you, Elyse. So my name is Nasser Hanna, and I am a medical oncologist here at IU. I do take care of patients who have lung cancer and try to research better therapies for tomorrow. As Elyse mentioned, I was Harry's doctor and Elise's friend and colleague and partner in this endeavor called End Lung Cancer Now. And I'm just so excited to have this conversation with Elyse today.
I will warn everyone that Dr. Hanna and I have some fairly far-ranging conversations. We tend to change subjects on a dime, so you might want to fasten your seatbelts. After Harry died, I knew that I wanted to be a part of this, of Simon. Just amazing people. I ran back to them like they were family. I was privileged to be able to volunteer at the Cancer Resource Center. And then came along this exciting initiative called End Lung Cancer Now. Dr. Hanna, could you please tell us what is End Lung Cancer Now and what inspired the idea?
Well, Elyse, I'll take the second part first on what inspired the idea. After taking care of people with cancer for a couple of decades now and witnessing a lot of the suffering and death that happens to wonderful people like your beloved Harry, it's really hard not to be moved and to be motivated and focused and dedicated towards reducing that suffering as much as you possibly can. I feel that you wake up every morning and you want to do as much as you can for as many as you can, right? For as long as you can, forever you can. And so that's sort of the guiding principle when you wake up every morning. The exciting thing about what we're taking on is that it's doable. It's not just pie in the sky, this can't happen. How can you possibly end lung cancer now? Well, to begin with, lung cancer used to be rare, not that long ago. At the start of the 20th century, rare diagnosis. You would have a hard time finding anything about it in a medical textbook. In the year 1900, there were about 300 reported cases. In 1930, there were 3,000 reported cases. Rare disease. Cancers of the lung were simply rare. But we know with the tobacco epidemic of the 20th century that changed. And lung cancer went from a rare diagnosis and a rare cause of suffering and death to the number one killer. It causes more death than prostate cancer, breast cancer, and colon cancer combined. It's by far the number one killer. It's the number one killer in men, and it's the number one killer in women. Now, that sounds very grim and very pessimistic and hopeless. But the truth of the matter is, because it was a rare form of cancer, it's possible through our will to make it rare again. So we decided to redouble our efforts. We don't need to reinvent the wheel. We know how to do this. The vision of End Lung Cancer Now is to make lung cancer a rare cause of suffering and death in the state of Indiana. And to accomplish this, we have 4 missions. Number 1 is to drive down that tobacco rate as much as we can. It's been going down. We need to keep pushing it down aggressively. Number 2, screening CT scans. We need to get those individuals who are considered high risk for lung cancer screened, because screening CT scans save lives, but too few people are getting them. Number 3, support research. We know the only way for progress is through research, and too few people have participation in research. And at the end of the day, our 4th mission is incredibly important to us as well, and that's supporting people who are dealing with this awful and devastating disease. So we are an advocacy group. This is an advocacy group. It's a voluntary advocacy group that lives within the ecosystem of the IU Simon Comprehensive Cancer Center. That gives us its power and prestige in collaboration with the community outreach and engagement arm of the Cancer Center.
Thank you. You mentioned research, and one of your favorite phrases is, when you study lung cancer, you study all cancer. Could you talk about that a little more, please?
Yeah, this is one of those things that really drives my passion towards having as much support as possible for lung cancer. So 80 to 90% of the causes of lung cancer have to do with the chronic exposure to carcinogens, cancer-causing chemicals. And it's not just a single exposure, it's day after day after day, year after year, sometimes decade after decade. And these are the carcinogens found in tobacco. These are the carcinogens found in the workplace. And sometimes these are the carcinogens found in the home. But it's decades of exposure. And so what happens is that there's not usually a single event that causes lung cancer. If you study the DNA in the cancer cell of somebody with lung cancer, what you'll discover is that lots of genes are mutated. Lots of chromosomes are broken up, and bits and pieces are translocated amongst one another. And so the result of this is that most of the things that cause cancer in the colon and in the prostate and in the breast and in the brain and in the pancreas, et cetera, are actually also happening in the cancer cell in somebody who has lung cancer. So if you can understand the disease process in lung cancer, and you can understand all those things that happen in the DNA, you are not just studying lung cancer, you are studying those other forms of cancer. And that's why investment in lung cancer research is a very wise investment.
Thank you. We know how difficult it is to quit smoking, and we know that there are other causes of lung cancer, but the percentages are, if we can get the tobacco use under control, that's huge. So I'm a patient of yours, and I've smoked forever. I've gotten this diagnosis of lung cancer. I'm thinking, I've gotten what I deserve. Why should I quit?
Okay, well, my goodness. Let's talk, Elyse. I got what I deserved. What a power, that's a powerful phrase. You got what you deserved. No one deserves lung cancer, period. There's no qualifier to that statement. And it's that mindset, it's that stigma that people who have lung cancer carry. In fact, even people who don't smoke carry that stigma. Most people who have lung cancer are actually not current smokers. They've either never smoked or they're former smokers, but that doesn't even matter, even if you're a current smoker. No one deserves this wretched, awful disease. We know that the vast majority of people who smoke, this is 80 to 90% of people, start smoking when their brain is still developing. That's in their immature teenage years. And that brain chemistry gets altered and the addiction is powerful. And it's hard to break that cycle of addiction. And this idea of you just need to quit, it's bad for you. Anybody who understands addiction knows what a naive thought that is. Most people who have addiction to hard drugs are not expected to just figure it out, just quit on your own. They need support. And unfortunately, support is oftentimes lacking. And the really awful negative consequences of smoking are frequently not seen for many years. So there's no incentive to try to go through this process of breaking this addiction. It's been said that people who are addicted to many substances, let's say they smoke cigarettes, but they also drink alcohol, or they smoke cigarettes, but they're also addicted to meth, that oftentimes it's the cigarette that's the toughest for them to break. Have you heard that? Does that ring true in your experience? What are your thoughts about that?
Very much so. I believe that Ray Charles famously said of all his vices, women, heroin, cocaine, marijuana, caffeine, alcohol, cigarettes, that cigarettes were the one that kicked his butt, that was the one he could not shake. That has certainly been my experience. I know, working in the bar and restaurant business for many years, a lot of people thought, well, if I can just, if I can kick the one, I'll be able to kick the other. I've seen many people give up drinking, and the cigarettes it just doesn't happen. It's part of it is certainly the nicotine addiction, and part of it is the behavioral aspect of it. Is there any reason to hope? I mean, I think maybe 20 years ago, if a patient and a doctor were sitting down together and his oncologist said, "You've got cancer, you better quit," probably felt like he was pretty much on his own. Have things changed at all in that regard?
Tremendously. If you're on your own to try to quit smoking, the most likely outcome of that is that it's not going to work long term. Now, there are some people. The likelihood of quitting smoking cold turkey on your own is 3%. The theme of addiction is relapse. That is the theme. That's true for any addiction that you have. And so you might be able to temporarily quit smoking, but then a new stressor comes, or something that results in smoking again happens. So this is something that occasionally people are able to do on their own, but that's true for anything. Sometimes people are just able to. But if we get the proper support, the likelihood of quitting short-term and maintaining that long-term is much higher. It might take 10, 15, 20 or more attempts before you're able to quit. And I can tell you that most people who smoke will tell you, I have tried quitting many times. I want to quit. I don't want to smoke. And I tried quitting last week. It lasted 6 hours. I'm going to try again tomorrow. And they go to sleep saying, okay, tomorrow is a different day. I'm going to try and quit. And it's tough. It's tough to do so. But you should know it is never too late to quit. If you have smoked for decades and you quit smoking, let's say at the age of 50, let's say you started when you were 17 and you quit at the age of 50, the positive effects on your cardiovascular system are almost immediate. Within hours to days, your blood vessels start to dilate, your heart rate starts to slow down. It's remarkable that sometimes when we see these changes in smoking policy, that you'll see it within the first few months. Emergency room visits go way down for people who are having heart attacks. Those effects are almost immediate. Secondly, the pulmonary function that you regain can be substantial even within the first 30 days. We've seen this in studies of bar workers where 30 days later, after these policies have been implemented, their pulmonary function studies can improve about 30%. But not only is it the cardiovascular effects and the effects on the lungs, it's also the effects on the incidence of cancer. Your likelihood of getting cancer goes down continuously after you quit smoking. You got to quit feeding the beast. You achieve or obtain about a new mutation in your DNA every 3 cigarettes you smoke. So think about that. If you smoke a pack of cigarettes a day today, you will have on average 7 new mutations in your DNA that you did not have yesterday. So you stop this progress of these mutations that occur, and we've seen this in studies. The incidence of lung cancer goes down continuously, but we have to remember there are other cancers caused by smoking other than lung cancer. Really, it affects pancreatic cancer. By the way, November is Lung Cancer Awareness Month. It's also Pancreatic Cancer Awareness Month. It affects kidney cancer and bladder cancer and throat cancer and esophageal cancer and so many others. Now, if you have a diagnosis of lung cancer, is it too late to quit? Does it make any difference at that point? The answer is absolutely yes. The latest Surgeon General's report addresses this. It addresses the issue of what is the outcome of cancer in terms of survival in patients who already have advanced disease and smoke versus quit smoking. And what's interesting is that patients live longer and do better if they quit smoking, even if your cancer is not smoking related. So this is true for, say, somebody with breast cancer or colon cancer. Continuing to smoke reduces the efficacy of our therapies. It increases the complication of their disease. It certainly slows healing down from surgery, makes radiation therapy less effective, and simply stated, people live shorter lives. So I can't imagine, there are very few scenarios I can think of where I would say, well, it's just too late to quit.
That is very compelling information. It's also incredibly encouraging. It's very encouraging and hopeful. And in my experience, when handled properly, every relapse can also be used to build on instead of thinking it as a start over. Each time someone who smokes quits again, they can learn from what's gone before.
Elyse, absolutely. Just a quick comment on that. Mm-hmm. Look, we're the healthcare providers, and we are the folks that patients most look to help them quit. And we have to do it without judgment, without bias. We have to believe in our patient. You can't go in with the attitude of, not even going to talk to him about it today. He's not going to quit smoking, or what difference does it make, or in the big scheme of things and all this. Because patients understand those messages. Well, Dr. Hanna didn't bring it up. It must not really be that important. And I'm just going to continue on. You can't give up on your patients. You have to believe in your patients. And that's a very important message for your patients to know. Because if you know anything about relationships and maybe even a parent-child relationship, which is not what the doctor-patient relationship is, it's more of a collaborative relationship. But you've got to believe. You've got to believe in the people that you're working with, and if they sense you don't believe in them, they actually feel negatively towards you. People want you to believe in them, and even if it's hard words for them and it's work for them to do, at the end of the day, they grow closer to you. They grow more trustful, and they respect you and like you even more.
Collaborative. I love your use of that word in getting into volunteer work and advocacy and listening to lung cancer patient stories, the stories of their caregivers and their families. The one theme that keeps coming through is, please try to remember that I'm not a patient, I'm still a person. And for you to be able to reach out to that patient and remember that they are a person struggling with all of the things in their outside life that they're struggling with. They're not just a lung cancer patient. And that is just huge. That is huge.
And Elyse, as you and I, we used to have these wonderful visits with Harry. What a special, beautiful man he was, still is in our hearts. And his smile, and just a good-hearted man he was. But I knew that when our visits were over, that it was you that would be going home with him, and it was you that would help him carry the burden. And it's a tough one because he had a lot of pain and a lot of disability, and you had that long relationship with him, the person that he trusted more than any person in the world, and you trusted more than any person in the world, the most important relationship. And I want you to talk a little bit about that. You leave the doctor's office, whether the news is good or not good. What happens? Talk to me about what happens when you leave that office and you're not coming back to see the doctor for a few weeks.
Well, I was certainly blessed. Harry did all the heavy lifting in our relationship. I do remember promising him on the drive down to the day we met you, Friday, March 18th, 2016. We were driving down to Simon. And I tend to be, as you well know, a somewhat anxious person and a little fearful. And I remember promising him, Harry, no more fear. What do we have to lose? I'm going to be, if I need to be that patient's wife, who is incredibly annoying, by asking questions, I will be that person. So a lot of our time away from you, well, we laughed a lot. Harry was a funny man, and he liked to laugh. A lot of times, as soon as we got home, we'd go out in the yard, especially if he'd had a treatment. He'd either start raking the gumballs off the sweet gum tree, or we'd cut the grass, and we would picture all the dying cancer cells just being sweat out of his body. We went outside and exercised. We took a walk. We talked things through. Sometimes we shed some tears. I can remember the day that we came home, and you had given us some priceless information. You had shared that you thought that Harry would die within the year. And that was a gift. We shed a few tears and we kind of talked about it, and it helped us to become, I think, more intentional about each day. It's hard to say a lot of good things about cancer, and I don't want people to take this the wrong way, but for Harry and for me, it did crystallize things. It gave us a sense of urgency. It helps you put things in perspective. Harry started saying, "This too shall pass." And then we adopted Coach Pagano's "So what? Now what?" We decided to really let people in to our cancer journey. Once Harry went into hospice in September of 2017, we have a tiny little house. He liked to call it the tar paper shack. And we had his hospice bed right in the middle of that tiny little room. And every Friday night for about 7 weeks, we had friends over and we played music and we ate and we drank and we played euchre. And we laughed. And if you've ever had the privilege of being around someone who is dying, you know that they may spend hours just with their eyes closed. They may be sleeping. You think they're not really part of it. Well, on a particular Friday evening, I think it may have even been Harry's birthday, he'd been quiet for several hours. The party was getting a little rowdier and rowdier. His mom was there. And she launched into a story, and she's telling this story, and out of nowhere, Harry pipes up with his eyes still closed. "No, that's not what happened." Everyone just laughed. We made a conscious decision to selfishly, Harry's mine. And I had to realize that Harry had a lot of friends, and Harry had family who adored him, and I needed to let people in so that they could have him too. And there are nights that September and October, honestly, I think if you'd been up in heaven and looked down at our little tar paper shack, the love light would have been glowing. We had just remarkable times. And I think at some level, he knew that he was leaving me with some pretty amazing memories.
Thank you for sharing that, Elyse. It's not the love of science, and we have the love of science, but it's the love of people that drives this work. And it's so much easier to prevent cancer than it is to treat it. The most wise words of the late, great Steve Williams, our first NCI Cancer Center director. And that's why we are determined to help drive down smoking rates. We are determined to help people get their screening CT scans, because we don't want to see people suffer and have those types of conversations. Now, having said that, you used a word that I really love, and that's intentionality. We're intentional. So things don't happen by accident. Great works and good works and great achievements and good achievements don't happen by accident. There is an intentionality to it. It's waking up every day and saying, what can I do to make a small difference? We can't make it all happen in one day, but if we stack one small achievement on top of another small achievement, then we can make a true difference. I'm always inspired by Bobby Kennedy's words to students in South Africa in the early 1960s, when he talked about what we can do to help one another, what we can do to make the world more just, what we can do to make our lives more meaningful. And the speech is known as the Ripple of Hope speech, and it sort of plays on that stacking good works together. You know, if you just have your small pebble and it's a big ocean, you can throw your pebble into the ocean and it makes just a tiny little ripple, and you feel like you really can't make much of a difference. But you have one advocate put a little bit of a pebble, and you get them to get a couple of their friends who are equally motivated. And then you work with other organizations, and then you get the power of the Simon Cancer Center behind you. And then you get people who are really, really talented in different ways, which is what we've done with End Lung Cancer now. We've gotten really good, smart people who know a lot about communication and art design and focus group testing and web development and PR, communications, understanding the science, understanding public health. And that's what's cool about End Lung Cancer now, is our core group have strengths that are non-overlapping. We do share a common passion, but when I look at our board meetings and I look at the faces, what I see are people who are so talented at what they do. And so it's just one small pebble, but we all throw in our pebble, and pretty soon there's this tidal wave of progress. And I truly believe that. You and I have talked a little bit about the analogy I stole from Dr. Einhorn, and I want to share this real quickly. So the problem of cancer and solving cancer's puzzle can seem incredibly overwhelming. Where do you even begin? It's so complicated. A person with lung cancer may have 50,000 point mutations in their DNA. They may have dozens of chromosomal translocations in their DNA. They may have missing parts of their DNA within the cancer cell. So many things have gone wrong. How do you even begin to put things together to come up with a solution? And if you attack it, just like you attack the tobacco problem or screening CT problem or getting more people in underrepresented groups to participate in research, if you think of it in those broad strokes, you really can become discouraged very quickly. But what happens is you first have to understand the problem. Like a puzzle, you have to have the pieces to the puzzle. And because of thousands of scientific researchers throughout the world over many decades, most of which are anonymous to people, we have so many of the pieces of the puzzle. We have the puzzle of how to reduce tobacco use. We have the puzzle of how to increase screening scans. We do this in breast cancer. Over 70% of eligible people for breast cancer screening get screened. Same for colon cancer. It's 10% for lung cancer. But we know how to do this. So what do you do with the puzzle? What does anybody do with a 1,000-piece puzzle? You first find the foundational pieces that make the outer edges. Okay. And now you have 20% of the puzzle done. Well, there's still 80%. Well, then what you do is you find pieces that may fit into the corners, and then you slowly build the puzzle so that there are fewer and fewer pieces left, and there are fewer and fewer places for those pieces to go. And then suddenly this picture of complete chaos and disorder gets formed, and then the pieces move in much more quickly, and suddenly the puzzle, the rapidity of progress and solving the puzzle happens like that. And that's really where we are. That is where we are, and that is why I am so hopeful. We are at such a critical time right now, Elyse. I really firmly believe we've got to put our foot to the pedal to the metal, so to speak. We need to put gasoline on our efforts. It's no time for complacency. Cancer is not taking a break from us, and we know how to do this. And that's why I'm so hopeful and so encouraged, because we have such a talented group of people. Now, where do you fit into this, Elyse? I'll tell you where you fit in. Not only do you do amazing work, anybody who has had any touch of what's going on in this organization will know Elyse's fingerprints are all over it. That has to do with our symposium, that has to do with all the gifting, that has to do with all the decision making. It also has to do with things like future events and current events, like the White Ribbon Project, which I want you to talk about. But more importantly than those works that she is doing and she is responsible for, I can tell you, Elyse, you inspire the work. And I've told you this before, and I'd like to say it again to how many people are listening to this. You are the heart and soul of this organization and the heart and soul of what we do. And at the end of the day, that's what drives the work. That's what all great efforts need. They need that heart and that soul, and you're the driving passion for it. So I want to thank you for that. Now, I'm sure I've thoroughly embarrassed you. And so I want you to talk about the White Ribbon Project as an example of how End Lung Cancer Now doesn't reinvent the wheel. It puts gasoline on existing efforts.
That's very generous of you. The smartest thing I ever did was to marry Harry Turula, and my wagon is just hitched to his star. This is all his legacy. This is all because of him. A fabulous young woman named Alicia Arnold, who is part of the Simon Cancer family. She is a nurse in breast cancer research, and healthy 47-year-old, bam, she gets a diagnosis of lung cancer. Well, through God's providence, she was familiar with something called the White Ribbon Project, and she brought it here to Simon Cancer, and Dr. Hanna connected the two of us. I encourage you to look up the whiteribbonproject.org. There's a woman in Colorado who got a diagnosis of lung cancer, and she asked if there were any support groups, and she was incorrectly told no, and she got angry, and she came home to her husband, who happens to be a doctor, and she said, I want a damn white ribbon for my front door. So he built her one. He made her one out of plywood, 2 feet by 1 foot, and they started a grassroots effort that has just taken off like wildfire. Simon Cancer is now a part of it. It is across the world. It is not part of a label it's just a bunch of people who really care, who understand that anyone who has lungs can get lung cancer. No one deserves it. And we can control the message. We can get the right message out there in front of the world. So I know, that I struggled a lot at the beginning of End Lung Cancer. Now I'm like, I get why all these brilliant people are here, but what am I doing here? I have a truck, I'm strong, I take good notes. But all of a sudden, here's this White Ribbon Project. I go out to the garage and I find Harry's old jigsaw. And I figure out how to make a white ribbon. And now Alicia and I got to spend with many other people. Diana, I'm leaving people out, but we spent 3 days in Multi-D giving away white ribbons. And it's an uphill climb because people, there is a stigma. They're ashamed. They think I don't deserve a ribbon, but they do. And we are a family. We are a community. And if Lung Cancer Awareness Month can do one thing, it's just to promote. The word advocate means one called to aid. Well, we're not just aiding, we're lifting each other up. It's just a beautiful thing. So if you don't know what to do, start small. Wear a ribbon on your shirt, put a ribbon up on your front door. Look up the website, have a conversation with a friend. You don't need to cure lung cancer to be a part of this. And that's what's so exciting. That's what's just so very exciting.
Yeah, I agree. And there's so many things that people can do if they feel moved to want to do that. You know, we talk about your time, we talk about your treasure. We'll take what you got, what you want to give. And if it's something that just means, you know what, I'll display a ribbon on my car or an end lung cancer, or walk around with an end lung cancer T-shirt on, that's incredibly valuable, and that's very important to know. You know, Harry was a carpenter, and you know, there's some power and symbolism in that. And you know, the work was, we need to take this wood and carve and shape these ribbons, and they're big. They're like 2 feet. Yeah, they're not small ribbons, and it takes good tools. And I know Harry loved his tools, and he's got lots of those tools. And honestly, Elyse, I can't imagine just the biggest grin he would have on his face watching you with his jigsaw, making those ribbons. I mean, I just smile thinking about it. And I've seen a picture of it. It's such a wonderful picture. But you know, the work is so fun, and it's so joyous. And anybody that wants to volunteer for end lung cancer now is going to get the privilege of working with you, because you are our advocate leader. We haven't said that yet, but within our organizational structure, Elyse is our advocate leader, and she'll help you. And we won't tell you what to do. What we're going to do is ask you, what are your interests? What are your skills? What level of interest do you have? And then we'll see if there's a connection on something that you can do. And maybe it's to help, you know, build awareness. Maybe it's to help with if you want to do something individual with your group friends or with your family, and maybe it's to help engage in the mission of reducing tobacco consumption. If you want to talk to legislators, if you want to fight on behalf of the Simon Cancer Center to get that state cigarette tax jacked up $1 a pack. We know, you know, nobody loves taxes. Nobody wants, you know, anything like that. We know it has a powerful effect on tobacco consumption. And so if you're interested in that, if you're interested in helping us with our outreach, we're going to be engaged in a mobile CT scanning effort that will go throughout the state, including in underserved populations that have reduced access to care. If you want to serve on a committee to help us plan that, there are so many opportunities, and a lot of this can be found on our website, and it's endlungcancernow.iu.edu. So I think we just have a few minutes left, like 5 minutes left. Elyse, any questions from that we received, or any final thoughts?
Thank you. Thank you. We do have a couple of questions. First question, what screening tests and frequency of testing is recommended for individuals with risk factors for lung cancer?
Yeah, the simplest way to state it is if you're between 50 and 80 and you have what's called a 20-pack year smoking history. So 20-pack years means a pack a day for 20 years, or half a pack a day for 40 years, or 3/4 of a pack a day for 30 years. It's the number of packs per day times the number of years. So if you have a 20-pack year smoking history and you're between the ages of 50 and 80, you may be eligible for a screening CT scan. And it's done once a year. It's low dose. The radiation exposure is very low. There's no IV contrast that's done, but it should be part of a program, because you will find things on screening scans that you have to have a proper plan for. So the Simon Cancer Center has a screening program. IU North has one. IU West has one. Other groups have them as well. So it's not just a matter of, you know, going somewhere and getting a scan and forgetting about it. It is a program, and it has to be done on an annual basis, because most lung cancers are not picked up on the first scan. Most lung cancers are picked up on subsequent scans. So that is a very powerful tool. It actually reduces the death from lung cancer. It appears far more in women than in men. Overall, it's about a 20% reduction in the risk of dying from lung cancer, but it's probably closer to 30%. And I would encourage any woman who smokes, who fits the criteria I just described, I encourage you to get your mammogram. I encourage you to get your colonoscopy and your flu shot and all the other things, your cholesterol checked, your blood pressure checked. To be honest with you, getting a screening CT scan might be the most important thing that you do. It may be the most likely thing to save your life. So I would encourage people to think about that, ask questions. You can find out more information on endlungcancernow.iu.edu. We're linked up on that webpage to all the programs, and you can find out how you can get a screening CT.
Thank you. And another question, kind of multi-parts. What's the percentage of tobacco smokers in Indiana? How long does a person have to worry if they've already quit smoking? And the person who asked this question mentioned that she has a family member who has stage 4 cancer and has been tobacco-free for over 35 years.
Yeah, so about 20% of Hoosiers are active smokers. That's much higher than the national average. We are, I think, 9th right now, which is an improvement. We used to be 2nd or 3rd. The top 3, have always been Indiana, North Carolina, and Kentucky. We've made a little bit of progress, so we're now about 9th or 10th, but the national average is under 14%. And what you really want to look at is teen smoking, because teen smoking are the future adult smokers. And in the United States, teen smoking is down to 5%. So that is very encouraging, because it gives us hope that we'll be in single digits. But in Indiana, far too many people smoke. Smoking is linked to lower people who have higher stress levels, people who have depression, anxiety, adjustment disorders. The population of people with bipolar disorders, about 50% smoke. 75% of people with schizophrenia are regular smokers. A very high percentage of people who suffer from depression or anxiety are smokers. It's much more prevalent in lower socioeconomic status and lower educational levels. It's very prevalent in rural areas and people who have less access to healthcare. So we've got a lot of work to do, because Indiana is a poorer state than most states, and it's a very rural state. And we have very high smoking rates. So that's where Indiana stands. It is better, though. It used to be 25% a decade ago, so we are trending down. In terms of how long can you be off cigarettes before it really, so the effects of stopping smoking on the cardiovascular and pulmonary systems is almost immediate. The challenge with smoking is that you've already developed those mutations. So we can't get those mutations back, but you can stop acquiring new mutations. And so it's kind of like crossing a busy street. Look, you can cross a busy street just so many times, and sometimes you'll get lucky, and then you'll get hit by a car. Well, sometimes the street doesn't have to be real busy and you get hit by a car. So it is true that most people who have quit for 35 years will escape the lung cancer risk. It gets down to close to the risk of a never smoker by about 35 years. That is true. But occasionally that is not entirely true. So I still encourage people to quit smoking, but unfortunately it is true that occasionally you still get lung cancer despite having quit many, many decades before.
Thank you. I see we're close to time. Is there anything you'd like to add before I take us home?
I guess in our last minute, I just want to thank you for being a great partner. And Harry and you inspire the work. And I hope we have given people some information that they can use. And I hope people will be interested in joining in lung cancer. Now, Elyse, you get the final word.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for taking the time to be a part of this today. We hope that you were informed and enlightened, but really more than that, we hope that you're encouraged. I just didn't know how much hope there was in the world of lung cancer. We strengthen each other. November is Lung Cancer Awareness Month, and there's still plenty of time left, and you can make a difference. in creating a life without Harry, I learned a lot through volunteering and through advocacy. And I can remember the first hospital stay we had was Thanksgiving weekend of 2016. And in the middle of the night, I would walk through the hospital and the empty corridors and the stairwells. And I found myself down in multi-D clinic, and there's a wall of doctors' pictures and names. And I remember reading something, and I remember writing it down in my notebook. And I took it home and I wrote it on cardboard to put on our wall, and it remains there to this day. And I'd like to finish with this thought. Cancer is so limited. It cannot cripple love. It cannot shatter hope. It cannot destroy peace. It cannot kill friendship. It cannot suppress memories. It cannot silence courage. It cannot invade the soul. It cannot conquer the spirit. And it cannot steal eternal life. And for all of that, I am so very grateful. Thank you all from the IU Simon Comprehensive Cancer Center. Happy Thanksgiving.